there any public comment? No public comment. We'll have roll call.
Mr. Washington,
Present.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Present.
Mr. Olthoff, Mr. Hess,
Present.
Mr. Tholen, Ms. Polk,
Present.
Mr. Snipes, Ms. Peters, Mr. Ritter, Mr. Zenz,
Present.
Ms. Haas,
Present.
Mr. Carrico,
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Present.
Mr. Featherling,
Present.
Mr. Smith,
Present.
Mr. Dunnell, Mr. Wheeler.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Now, is there any public comment? We have approval of the minutes for January the 10th, 2019. Motion. Mr. Kinzinger and Mr. Cotton Eckhoff. Yeah, okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Same sign, negative, none. Highway and Mark Rogers will have the motion to open the sealed bids. Mr. Hess and Andy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays, same sign. The ayes have it.
Okay, good morning. First, the only proposal we have this morning for Bourbonnais Road District, section 06-02-105-01-BR. This is the bridge on Larry Power Road just east of Bradley. And the proposal I have is from Toby's Construction and Cartage. They have a bid bond attached as a proposal guarantee. And they have an ATC attached. Toby's bid is $529,864.05. $529,864.05. I would recommend accepting the bid. It's less than 10% over. With the uncertainty of the steel prices and stuff, our estimate may have come in a little bit lower than what we had thought. So I would recommend approval.
Andy, motion.
Mr. Bazillion, do you concur? Okay.
If I could, Mr. Washington, or Mr. Chairman, could you explain two things? First of all, the 10%, because there's new members of the committee, so they understand that, and then also what an ATC is.
Okay.
Because they may not know what that is.
Sure. I guess I'll start with the beginning. This project is a township bridge project. Through MFT, the state has a township bridge program which pays 80% of the cost of the bridge. The township petitioned the county to pay 10%. So the county and the township split the 20%. So we're paying 10%, the township is paying 10%, and that's why this board approves the contract. When we're letting in a process like this, the state wants to know, you have to have, if it's less than 10%, normally you can award with justification. If it's over 10%, the state wants written justification of why you accepted the bid. So in these circumstances, we haven't had a bridge let in probably in 2 years. So, you know, I did hear through the grapevine that the steel prices with the tariffs have gone up, and also Country Materials, who makes the beams, their Blackstone plant closed a few years ago. They have a plant in Champaign and a plant in Salem, and it was brought to my attention that they couldn't get these in Champaign, so they're coming from Salem, so there was some extra cost in transportation for the beam, so that's why it probably came in a little bit further. The ATC is apprenticeship and training. The Department of Transportation considers MFT funds to be according to the state procurement, and anytime that you use state money, the contractor has to participate in apprenticeship and training. So we have to have that. They have to fill out a form that says that they participated in apprenticeship and training certification, but we don't on our local money, just when it's MFT.
Okay. Need,
Mr. Chair, I have one quick question. Is there a reason why you would only get one bid on a project like this?
It all depends. 2 people took out proposals, but you know, we always hope for more than 1 bid, but on occasion you will find as we go through the bidding season here through about May, you're going to see some projects have 1 bidder, some might have 3 or 4.
Okay, thank you.
we'll have a motion to accept, to approve the second roll call. Go ahead.
Mr. Washington,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Ms. Polk,
Aye.
Mr. Snipes,
Aye.
Ms. Peters,
Aye.
Mr. Zenz,
Aye.
Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Carrico,
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler. Motion carries.
Okay.
I have a few pay estimates this morning. The first one is for our county general maintenance for 2019. This is payable to Compass Materials America. This is for bulk salt that we store at our highway garage, and that amount is $27,961.36. Next is for Limestone Road District for their 2019 general maintenance payable to Morton Salt, and that's for salt that was delivered to their shed, and that amount is $13,704.43. Next is Pembroke Township for their 2019 general maintenance payable to the Pembroke Township Road District Treasurer, and that is for equipment rental. Equipment rental is the townships can, and the county can use their equipment and bill those hours and get paid from their motor fuel tax funds into their general fund. So that's what this pay estimate is, and that amount is $25,238.95. Next is our county section number 17-00301-00-BR non-MFT. This is payable to Toby's Construction and Cartage. This was a bridge on the Kankakee-Livingston County line. We have to pay a proportion based on our assessed valuations. So Livingston County pays 25.12% and Kankakee County pays 74.88% of that cost for that bridge work. Livingston County took the lead. They had the letting. They fronted the they did all the construction inspection and prepared all the plans. And that final payment amount is $9,831.74. Next is our section 18-00000-00-BR. This is payable to Toby's Construction and Cartage. This is an expansion joint was damaged on Warner Bridge. We called Toby's Construction and Cartage, and they came out and fixed that for us, and that amount is $1,230.63. And last is Yellowhead Road District, section 18-17106-01-BR non-MFT. This is payable to Toby's Construction and Cartage. This is for some 7 timber pilings that were decayed on a bridge in Yellowhead Township. The township petitioned us to pay half, so we're paying half of that amount. So the total to Toby's is $33,271.32.
On the Pembroke Township, am I understanding that we're paying them to use their own equipment? back
Yes.
through motor fuel money?
Yes, just like we do that too. Some years we've done the same thing. We keep track of hours. The state has a rental rate for each piece of equipment, and whenever they do work, they keep track of the hours, and then we write a check from their motor fuel tax fund to the township to put in their general road fund.
Does every township do this?
Several do, yes, and we might do it this year also.
Kind of seems like if we own the equipment and we're getting paid to use our own equipment, it's kind of like a circular firing squad here.
It's a way for the road district to, if they're short on cash for other expenses, they can charge those hours and get money into their general fund from their motor fuel tax fund.
See, we're custodians of the motor fuel tax.
Oh, I understand that. It's just, and it's a being new question here.
Sure.
But having some familiarity with another township on the west end and how their equipment was purchased and used, I've never heard of them being reimbursed for owning their own equipment.
Which township?
Salina.
Yes, Mr. Van Gilder has used equipment rental and has gotten money from his MFT into his general fund before.
Okay, as long as we're not going to jail.
We're audited every year.
It just,
We need a motion for that.
Thank you, Mr. Washington.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Quick question. The repairs done by Toby Construction, how are those costs determined?
Time and material.
Okay, so this is a summary of a time and material. bid.
Correct.
Thank you. And who reviews that? You do?
Our staff does,
Very good,
yes.
thank you.
Well, we need a motion for that, right? We'll have a motion to approve those payouts.
Motion to
Mr.
combine
Wheeler?
approve.
Combine the payouts. All in favor, say aye.
Was Mr. Smith the second?
Mr. Smith, second. You got it. Roll call vote.
Mr. Washington,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Ms. Polk,
Aye.
Mr. Snipes,
Aye.
Ms. Peters,
Aye.
Mr. Zenz,
Aye.
Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Carrico,
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye.
Motion carries.
The only other thing I have on the agenda under other businesses, we did have a compliance review done at the office for 2016 and 2017 for county motor fuel tax and for township bridge program funds. And you have a copy of those in front of you. I was told I need to present that to the committee and put them on file with the county board. So that's just for your information.
Thank you. Now we'll have buildings.
All right, morning.
Morning.
First item on the agenda is the facility dude report for the month of January. We had 156 work orders, which is, a little bit busier than normal. Financial report, we'll jump to that. I dropped off in front of you there, you'll see some copies of the spreadsheet. I apologize, when I'd gotten the report, the names for each grouping on the left side was cut off. So I went ahead and wrote that in there on your copies. So the first line item is gonna be service contracts. The second the second one is zeroed out, but then after that, you've got miscellaneous, building and equipment after that, and then auto is the last one. So you'll see, current year totals, 26,615.86 for, January compared to 19,000 in, 2018. So as I always do, I look back to see, where the differences were. Service contract for Kone was 5,562 for the first quarter. I couldn't find it anywhere. I don't know why. I went back all the way to 2016 before I found a billing for the first quarter of our Kone maintenance agreement. So why that was non-existent without the previous director here, I can't explain that. But I know what our annual cost is, and I know that is 25% of our annual, so I feel pretty comfortable with the fact that you know, that we had this Kone service contract for the first quarter of $5,500. So that was part of the overage compared to 2018. A couple other ones that I'll call out under building equipment. You'll see at the admin we had $4,817 in expense. A few of those items was a large order for supplies. That's garbage bags for all the buildings. That's hand soap for all the buildings, paper towels, toilet paper, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a large order there. And then just a couple other smaller ones. If you go over to the new jail under building and equipment, $4,769. Majority of that was credit card bills for myself and my lead mechanic out at the jail. Majority of his $2,000, his bill was $2,000. Majority of that was $1,800 in a thermostatic mixing valve, which regulates the water temperature when you turn the showers on out there. Those are very expensive parts, obviously, as you can see. Then I had an $1,100 expense, and that was for a toilet, a stainless toilet that had cracked in several places, was beyond repair. And every stainless toilet out there cost us $1,100. So that's basically it. I'll take any questions that you might have on the financial report.
Mr. Haas.
Quick question for you, sir.
Sure.
Being new to this, what to do before?
We use, it's called Facility Dude. It's our software system that many employees throughout the county have access to. So when they see something that needs attention in a building, they put a work order in the system. So then I get the work order and then I assign it to the appropriate employee in each facility. Okay. So that's what that is.
Okay, so that's just like a company or a brand name or something?
Software system.
Okay.
Any further questions? You got it?
Okay. Moving on, the next item on your agenda is going to be a building report. January was busy. I think talked to Chairman Wheeler. We were talking about the weather, between 30 below temps and precipitation of some kind, I think every day throughout the month of January. Everything's up. Overtime's up, salt usage is up, everywhere. My anxiety level's up, as you can tell. So it was a busy January. We'll start here at 189. You know, typical kind of issues, just chasing air handler issues, chasing heating issues. There's a lot of sediment. You know, our boiler system here is very old. There's sediment that gets in the pipes. When the sediment gets into the air handler units and the coils, they don't heat up properly. So I try to utilize my staff as much as possible, you know, to clear it when those block up. But sometimes they're blocked and our people can't do it. So I need to call in a contractor to come in and assist. So AHU 6 on the 4th, 11 and 12 on the 5th. We've had issues with those. You know, again, with the 30 below temps, you know, I was constantly at home on the computer, regulating, changing things, turning air handlers off, you know, because some air handlers in the building just cool. You know, we have radiators here that heat, and some of them, the air handlers, the only purpose is to regulate the heat and cool. So shutting off a lot of those, going full heat, you know, just to try to keep things at a decent temperature here in the building. Equipment, again, using it every day almost. We've had John Deere tractors that, you know, have been broken down. We've got parts on order. You know, you name it, it's gone wrong in the last 30 days. So those are all things that my staff has been working on. You'll see on your agenda, since we're here at 189, we'll jump to the keyless swipe system that's on your agenda. This is something that I've been in discussions with Chairman Wheeler and Anita. You know, out at Jerome Combs, our doors have a swipe system, all of our exterior doors and many of our interior doors. But you walk up, you swipe your key card, that allows you access into the building. Obviously here, we don't have anything like that. Everything is keyed, and that's fine, but you know, there's obviously issues with that. And you know, there's keys that over the years, undoubtedly, there's keys that have not made their way back, you know, to our locker. If someone should lose a key, especially a master key, that creates a large issue, you know, because the master key opens the front door and then it opens every other door in the building. And if someone were to misplace one of those, again, big problem. So I've gotten some numbers on, you know, what it would cost to just go to one door. And the initial thought was to just go with the system at the west door, or we wanted to go to both doors. The both door price was $7,300. If we went just to the west door, it was $5,100. So from that standpoint, I began talking to Anita, and Chairman Wheeler has had many conversations with Anita about, you know, payroll systems and becoming more efficient on our clocking in and out. And I learned that there's a way to integrate your swipes with our payroll system. So I can see Anita's chomping at the bit, so she's ready to go.
I did talk to Andy and Wes about this. There is a way, there's a lot of advantages to tying a key card entry with time. You can do that, and then what we would end up with is, as people enter the building, it's clocking them in. Right now, our payroll system is separate, so everybody's got a manual key. They get to their desk, they go into the computer, and then log into Paylocity, which is our payroll time system. Paylocity does both our time entry and our web benefits. There are issues with that system. It is costly. We spent last year about $86,000 on that software system, just in like per check fees and support fees for that system. So it is very costly. There are issues with the amount of manual entry that goes on and manual correction of the time. Both at a supervisor level, moving time around, and then at a payroll, Joanne in the administration department works on that. That's about 70% of what she does, is correcting and getting that software ready to feed over to the payroll processing outsource vendor that we have. They run our checks, etc. That also ties into our web benefits. So based on these conversations, I went and looked at a couple vendors. There are two vendors that are interested that I've spoken to, both national vendors. One is ADP and one is uses the Kronos system. Both are well known. I've seen them both in other organizations where I've worked. They both have keyless swipe entry and would be interested in making a proposal that does that whole piece. The next step really for both of those is a deep dive into our system and how many people, how many cards, how many doors, how many earnings codes, how many benefit types. So it would be quite a long process. They're both wanting to know at this point where the board really wants to go. Do we want to proceed with looking at a solution and getting some sort of a proposal, or do we not? So I guess that's the question at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there's really two questions here. It was Wes doing his due diligence to figure out, okay, how do we not have to rekey all the doors if we lose a master key, which is costly, and I know that we've had to do in the recent past. You know, even if a board member leaves, you know, we don't get the key back, that creates a problem. And heaven forbid it's a master key. So there's a lot of cost to that. The other side was 1 or 2 doors, and so we kind of have a price for what that costs, and it's not cheap. But 1 door was what?
Just to do the exterior doors, I think we're about $500 to do the exterior doors. So if you multiply that throughout the building, you know, you're talking a significant amount of money.
Well, that's the key, but I'm talking about the electronic swipe system is
right.
$8 grand
For both doors was about $8 grand, yeah.
with the brain, and that is one that doesn't talk to a payroll system. So that didn't make a lot of sense because the payback on that would be it'd take a lot of doors, you know, over probably maybe 10 years on the amount of times we don't know how many times people would either lose a key or we wouldn't get it back. But if we're looking at price isn't cost, I guess is my point. What is the cost of running our payroll system and our doors? You know, the courthouse has swipe in right now. Health department, they have swipe. Kevin, do you have comment on that? But I will say that courthouse and the jail, coroner's office all have swipe. It would make sense for us to have that situation as well. And there may be an IT reason to do it or not to do it as well. So,
Kevin. Go ahead.
I want to be careful how I say this to make sure. I don't want to discourage you from looking at this. We have looked at this several times, and because of several reasons, I want to make sure that when you do look at this, you need to start with the finance department. The MIP system, that's always presented a problem. When we've looked at this, we've looked at the vendors that you're talking about. And like you, when I've worked other places, I've dealt with those vendors. The vendors usually isn't the issue. It's the structure and how each department does their payroll differently has always stopped us cold when we got a little different. Your department is less of an issue than some of the other ones. And since we try to be consistent across all that, that's always stopped it cold. Usually the hardest one, as you probably know by now, is the sheriff's department and the highway department. But so I'm not discouraging you, but I wanted to let you know we've looked at this a lot. And since it's really key that the information come out properly so it can get into your financial system, that you start with Steve, because he probably still has the records for some of this stuff. So I'm not against it. I'm just saying there are other things, because the end that you're talking about is easily able to do if you had the money. We might not have the money, but the back end is where it always stopped it. And you always wanted to make sure your reports gave you accurate information. And I believe at some point, Steve either couldn't verify that, or he was going to say, I need to hire 2 more people to go fix what this was going to put in improperly. And that just didn't make any sense at that point. So I just want to throw that out there.
if I could mention to his point, the first step is to let you know the buildings and grounds issue, and the total integrated solution may be exactly what he's talking about, sending it to finance with a recommendation that we investigate that. This committee would say, yeah, there is kind of a security issue and our fix is expensive and it doesn't address potential other savings that we can get elsewhere. So I didn't want to put you in the middle of a financial discussion here. But just to say, yeah, we see value in doing a request for proposal and going through the steps now, because technology may have changed and the systems may have changed to accommodate all these different pay codes we have, all these different incentives that these contracts or have built into them. So that's kind of why I brought it here first, and then it would go to finance to do the RFP for these two companies.
Mr. Snipes.
Thank you. Not to belabor the issue, but certainly if we're moving in a technological society and we're not moving there, we're there. In the technological information society, it sounds plausible to look at the keyless entry. I guess from an economic standpoint, I would defer to finance as to the cost, weighing the cost as to not having it versus having it, and if there's a cost benefit after calculating all the other risk factors or whatever, because I can see the positive. If a person loses a key, you got to turn around and change every lock or whether it's the master key. However, if you was in a keyless system, you simply just restrict that person from the software standpoint. So as a result, you don't have to call ACE or anybody else and change anything. It's just that you can now eliminate it. So I can see the benefits going either way. The problem is the integration into the system. What makes it different? I mean, I look at Kankakee School District, was a little bit different than here, but basically each school has its own code access. As far as I'm at the high school, I can't get into King or Kennedy because again, my key swipe, or I can, depending on how they set it up. So my thing is that I guess my question would be from this committee is we would send it there, but we want to send it there with some type of direction as to what it is that we're looking at. And I guess it is this integration system, and you all having the conversation with the tech department as far as to how we can make it work. Apparently it has worked because it is being utilized at the jail, and it's being utilized, I believe, in another area. So how do we make it work here, and then look at the benefit, pros and cons? You know, I think we can have that conversation now, and to move it towards finance where you can have more conversation to see if we can make it work, because apparently we've had conversations, but because of the finance and everything else, we stopped it in its track. I'm not saying we're there yet, but there's a little window of hope where we can look at it to see if there's a cost benefit to it.
Mr. Zenz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess having worked with some of these kinds of systems in the past as well, my concern would be, what are the safeguards that will be in place in ensuring that financial information like that from payroll would not be compromised?
The only part that I wanted to add in is I hope I didn't confuse the issue. Technology-wise, we can implement whatever you decide to want to. The network's been built out, so we can do that. I was stating that it wasn't a technology issue; it was an accounting issue that slowed us up. So it's if you, the chairman, Anita, says, all right, we think we've got that solved, we can do that part. That's not an issue. It was an issue other than us. So yeah, we would be ready to do that. I just want to say there was the things that stopped it cold were not technology. Everything's locked down. Anything that would happen here would be inside the network, protected by layers of firewall and software. Nothing from outside is going to be able to get into it. That wasn't the concern. It was that the information was going to, they thought it may feed in incorrectly or in a lump sum, which made somebody sit down and break it back out. That wasn't my part, wasn't part of that. So we can deal with it technology wise. There was another issue is what I was stating. Sorry if I confused it.
I'd like to make a motion at this time that we recommend to the finance department to investigate the keyless swipe system, ADM, for our main building here.
We have a motion and a second. All in, Mr. Haas, Mr. Kinzinger.
Not to belabor a point, but another advantage to this is a security issue. You'll know who's in the building. I'd like to revise his motion just a little bit and suggest that Anita and Kevin look at a preliminary cost benefit ratio? Because it sounds to me like there could be savings even realized from our present system, and then make a recommendation to the finance committee.
Mr. Wheeler?
I would say that that is part of the RFP process, and you would have that, absolutely.
Okay, very
So
good.
it's to look at, really, it's not just the two companies, it's maybe there's other people who want to bid on this as well. But it's to look at the total cost of everything we're doing, all the pay codes we have, because we have a lot of pay codes for all the different classifications we have. I mean, what, 400 or 500? I don't know, it's a lot, it's crazy. But that's part of it, is to look at the total cost and not just the price of the system.
That's good.
And just so everybody's clear, you know, we just didn't want to go out and buy a key card system that works just for one door here that doesn't feed into the system. Okay, so we're tapping the brakes on that, and we may find that a key card system that all these companies offer that will eventually work in a benefit system. So I would think it might be in order to approve us, if we do find that key card, to pull the trigger on that for this building, to secure the building and get key cards here. Because that's just the front end. That's just the nuts and bolts. Do you see my point? I don't want him to have to wait a month to say, okay, well, whoever's bidding on this, they will be able to use this key card system that will integrate into a payroll system. And it's gonna cost, you know, maybe we put a cap and say no more than $4,000 for that door, whatever. I just wanna throw that out there because I don't wanna have him have to wait another month, come back here when we know that's the direction we're gonna go. We have to secure the building.
But
Mr. Snipes?
One of the things I would just add is probably look at the district as to the Skyward Finance, because in that, though we are different pay codes, pay grades, and in different things, I'm sure they would have probably a complex as well. It's neatly situated that I can go on my computer and see just my time, what I've used, my benefit. If I don't want a W-2 form, I can get it electronically, and it doesn't have to be mailed, which is a cost savings or whatever. So I would look at, we call it Skyward Finance, but I would probably look at that software because they hire a lot more employees than we do, and there's a variable from administrative to all the different positions that they do have, and yet they're able to, in Skyward Finance, give each individual their ownership of their account by looking at the times they use, blah, 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 blah.
We currently have that. Yeah, we currently
have
So
that.
you have
Yeah.
the current, so with that, I don't see how we can't integrate it, so I'm for it.
Mr. Kinzinger?
a little bit of confusion on my part in terms of the hardware. I think that what I would like to see happen is before we buy any keyless entry system anywhere, that the system we buy works with what Anita and Kevin are talking about, so that we don't spend $4,000 unnecessarily.
That's exactly my point.
Okay, that's.
If we find
we're on
that
the same
between
page.
now and an RFP is issued,
That's fine.
as long as it fits in with what people are gonna propose.
And I'm in favor of even spending more money than 8,000 if that happens, just so that we don't blow 4,000 for something that we know won't work in the future.
Understood.
I don't know what, 5. I just have a question, and Anita or Mr. Hill or Wheeler may know the answer. With the keyless or the swipe systems out at the jail and the coroner, is that tied to payroll?
No,
Not now.
no. It's just entry in and out, and it's not, and then the employees, like the corrections officers, go in and sit at a computer, and then they log into Paylocity to record.
That's the way it was when I was there.
Yeah, still that way.
So the corrected motion is, we've talked around it so much.
Yeah.
Could I summarize?
Go ahead.
If this is okay with the motion in the second, to allow the RFP to, recommend finance puts out an RFP, and also to recommend the authorization to purchase a swipe system for the door here at 189, if it does match what anything that comes in a proposal would look like as far as a timekeeping system. So
That way
we're
you
not
can-
wasting the money as we discussed.
That way Wes can go ahead with it now.
If he has to, if he finds a solution between now and next month.
I'd like to add that to my motion, please.
You got that.
We can edit accordingly when we go upstairs. So it makes sense.
6 paragraph.
All right, we ready to move on?
We gotta vote.
Oh,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We don't have to do this.
No, because we're not.
We're not spending any money. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays, same sign. Ayes have it. Now,
ready to go?
yeah.
All right, over at the courthouse, I'll be brief. We should move pretty good here going forward. At the courthouse, came in one day a few weeks ago. I had no control over any of the basement heating systems over there. Had to call out Precision Controls, who does our, who puts the software together for us there. And the software had completely shut down. He thinks it was because of a power surge of some kind. He spent the tech about 8-9 hours here that day, had to completely rewrite the entire system to get us back up and running there. And of course, that was, you know, one of the days where it was very cold outside. Over at the annex, nothing really to report there. Again, you know, that building, when it was 30 below zero outside, I couldn't get it above about 62 degrees. Was about as warm as that building would get, you know, when it was that cold. The old jail, last week or last meeting, we talked about the maintenance staff buying a ProPress tool. I'm sure most of you remember that discussion. We're gonna pump the brakes on that. Apparently, there's some issue with you know, maintenance staff who are not plumbers performing plumbing work. I've talked to Delbert. I've talked to a few other folks. Looks like that's not gonna work out for us. So we're gonna pump the brakes on that. Just wanted to let the committee know. The old jail, again, when it was 30 below zero, we found a variety of heating issues that we didn't even know that we had. You know, when it's 0 to, you know, 35 degrees in the winter, the building heated quite nicely. When it was 30 below zero, you know, we found some problems, which I guess is good because we've corrected them, and the building is now heating better than it ever has. So I guess that was a good thing. Elevator, we've talked about some issues there. That is now fixed. They put our new elevator in, and I talked multiple times at this committee about, you know, some clanging that was going on with the elevator. Kone's come out. They've remedied it. It's working like a charm right now. So no issue, no more issues there. Jerome Combs, we had a pipe break January 30th at 10:30 p.m. I was on site by about 11 o'clock together with our lead mechanic out there. Made some phone calls. We had a water mitigation company on site within about an hour. Got the water sucked up, got dehumidifiers, fans down, dried it out in a few days. Right now, I'm working through the insurance company on repairs. Minimal repairs. It was in visitation at the jail, and if you're familiar with the construction out there, most of it is block. That's a good thing. It did get into the offices a little bit, so there was some drywall affected. The closet where the pipe broke was obviously needed to be gutted. So working through some repair estimates right now and getting those to the insurance company for review. So heat exchanger, we lost heat out there in public safety, first floor on the west side. We had called out a contractor. The heat exchanger was out, or bad rather. There were holes in it. It was stinking up that part of the building. That's how we were alerted to it. We immediately shut the unit down. Got the contractor out there. Had to order parts, but that's now back up and running. Variety of laundry issues out there. We met with a contractor last week. The washing machines all are leaking. They're putting, when the machine shuts off, the valves won't close, and there's still water being dumped into the washing machines, which means when you pull clothes out, they're still really wet. No matter how much you spin them, they're still wet. And then they're going into dryers, and they're taking longer to dry. So, you know, when a dryer runs for too long, everybody knows what issues that creates. So I'm working with corrections out there to identify some solutions, both on the dryers. We're going to be ordering parts for our washers. We're either going to go with the subcontractor, or I'm going to have my staff do it. Our preliminary estimates are going to run about $3,000 to $4,000 to get those washed. There's four, can't remember off the top of my head, there's 3 or 4 of them there, but they all need some degree of repair. So you're looking probably about $1,000 per washer And not only does it create issues with the laundry, we're wasting a lot of water because the water just keeps running. So that's something that is on my radar here to get done very quickly. I just wanted to bring it to the committee's attention. Johnson Controls, this is another issue. Johnson Controls is the company that has our software system out there for every air handler at Jerome Combs. The boards that are in those units, those rooftop units that control and regulate the heat, we go to our computers, we punch in numbers, and it changes the heat by what the set point is. This was brought to my attention about a month and a half ago. They said your boards are obsolete. Like, the boards are not made anymore. The boards are 15, 16 years old. They're original to the building. Can't get them. He's like, you can refurbish them, but I'm gonna tell you right now, the refurbished cost is more than the new cost. So he's like, it makes no sense to try to pull out a board, send it off, be down for a few weeks, refurbish the board, and then put the old board back in. He's like, you're throwing good money after bad. So as luck would have it, a week ago we had a board go out. So I went ahead and given the approval on it. It's got to be done. A board is $2,200. And the reason the boards are different now is the way they communicate. The communication for the old boards and the new boards are completely different. So that's something, I think the game plan from my standpoint is going to be so we're never down. Once we get this one done, I'm going to do one more. And I'm going to pull the old board out of it. So we'll put a new board in, and I'll have an old board sitting on hand that if any of them go down, we can unplug it, put the old board in, get a new one ordered. When the new one comes in, take that one, throw it in, take the old board out. We always have a spare. So just to make everybody aware, that's a lot of things like that.
Well, my question is how much is the new board?
$2,200.
A brand new board and refurb is?
He said well in excess of that.
Okay, and then how many of these units are there?
I believe there's more than 30 up there.
Can you leverage volume discounting?
I can try that. I mean, given our financial situation,
I didn't say we're doing it tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, I can look into.
If we limp along for a year or so, and then we look at, do we need to actually go out and buy 20 boards at a time, to get through this, or 18 or whatever the number is,
right?
And we save $200, $300, $400 a board, it would make some sense.
No, the fight, you'd have to be substantial. Otherwise, I think my plan of just doing the one at a time would be make the most sense. But yeah, if they're going to give us a good chunk off, and absolutely, I can look into that.
Okay.
But that's a problem all over. I mean, a lot of our stuff is very old. I'm not telling you anything you guys don't know, So there's other systems that we have that are ancient, that the Precision Controls told me, nobody else uses what you use. Nobody uses it. So that's something just going forward, we'll deal with it, when those things come up, but wanted to make you aware. Shower doors, we talked about last meeting. I ordered one. We're going to get it installed, see if we like it. Water control devices, we've talked about that, and frankly, I just haven't had the time to do anything with it. I have the proposal, but once maybe we get the shower doors done and the laundry issues rectified and the pipe break buttoned up, we'll look into that. So, last but not least, we had ComEd come out. If anybody wants one, they did a facility assessment at all of our buildings. I shared it with Chairman Wheeler. If anybody wants one, you can come up to my office. I'll make you a copy. I just got it yesterday. I haven't had a chance to really dive through it, but they basically have gone through all the buildings for us. They've identified areas where we can save money. They've identified the return on investment. They've identified the incentive, the monies that they would put forward to the upgrades if we choose to do them. I've got a conference call on this at 1 o'clock today, so I'm going to see what they have to say about this. I'm going to see if this is it, if they can do any more. But these are available if you want to come up to my office. I'll run you a copy. So that's all I got.
They're in the old business. Any new business? Ms. Pope?
Did we take up an offering for a card or flowers for Mr. Tripp? And do we have a benevolence fund? And no one asked me if I wanted to donate.
Mr. Wheeler went ahead and did it, and then we as individual members contribute to it.
Okay. Are we always going to keep something there in case something like this happens? Can we have a petty cash or
Thank you.
something?
Yeah, and yes, please, I guess is the answer to that. It's unfortunately it's happened twice where as soon as we established it, or actually something happened, then we paid for that, then something
Right.
else happened before we were able to reestablish it. So we've had 2 cases where we bought flowers, and in this case, it was a very nice bird bath that would stay with the Tripp family. It was a really nice. Kelly picked it out. It was wonderful.
Okay.
They really liked it. But yeah, so we could use that situation, and it'd be nice to have a couple $100 sitting there, because you can't get much with $40 these days.
I know.
Got that right.
So, a couple $100 in that fund, and then, when it's spent, then we could let everybody know to do it again. So,
Right.
we do keep a list, so, of that, just to keep track, and we can keep the receipt so everybody knows where it went, so.
So you can contribute yours today if you want to,
Thank you.
as I have to, because I kept forgetting about it. Any other business? Compliance, what is this?
We did those earlier.
What's that?
We with Rogers before.
Oh, okay. Then we'll have a motion to adjourn. Mr. Bones makes the motion. And Mr. Snipes, the second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Second sign. There I have it.